Hey, everybody. It's the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode number 220, 220, 221, whatever it takes. We're going to do it. I'm your host, Phil Huber, joined by Logan and John. Today, we're going to go through some listener comments, as always. We're also going to check in on bandsaw options, suggestions, mystery topic. And then we're also going to talk about tools that make woodworkers better, but that are probably a little surprising to you. So you want to make sure that you stick around for that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Your efforts in subscribing to Woodsmith, ShopNotes, and Popular Woodworking is what makes this show possible. Also want to say that later this year in September, I will be traveling to England to do a woodworking tour of some sites in England, and I would love for you to join me on that. Mike Pekovich, creative director over at Fine Woodworking, is going to be coming along as well. So we're going to be checking out a few sites, learning about different aspects of English woodworking, both current and historical. We'll look at a few museums, check in on a couple of active shops, and see some tools being made and designed, and we would love to have you part of that. You can check that out at woodsmith.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Harvey Industries. Good enough is not good enough. See all of our new tools at harveywoodworking.com. All right. Checking in on last week's show.
I feel like Harvey's motto is like a direct defiance to like my motto, where they say good enough is not good enough. Because I'm like, good enough is good enough. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a direct shot at me. I don't know.
Right. The back half of this episode is brought to you by John Doyle. It's good enough.
That podcast was just good enough.
Just good enough.
It was perfectly adequate.
A couple of comments from last week's. I'm surprised that there weren't more comments on that one. That one's interesting to me. One is, Logan, put the jointer next to the table saw and reconfigure your camera setup. Maybe hang the camera from a ceiling mount.
Yeah. I think we have some like track that from the old studio that we could set up in your studio or your shop, and we can.
I've looked at like ceiling mounted gambrels. They're so expensive, especially since my ceilings are 14 foot. Like, yeah, you're way up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that high up, it would be a sucker to try and eliminate vibration.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the camera would just be constantly in motion.
Yep. Although it makes me really want to have like a meat locker ceiling track in here where I can just wheel stuff around,
Sure.
mounted from the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Always a possibility. Bob the puppy doc says, so Logan needs a desk for the office. I hear there's a 24-inch jointer looking for a home. Large flat surface for writing, complete with built-in paper shredder to dispose of the evidence. What more could he need?
Yeah, when you brought that in, when you first got it, I thought the base of it would make a pretty cool like workbench base.
And it might still.
Yeah. The problem is it's like, since there's only 4 of them, it feels like there's historical significance there that it's like needs to be put back together and restored. If it were just some random tool base that didn't have any use to it, it would be pretty cool.
I don't think that jointer would fit in your office either.
Have to cut a bigger door.
It would fit through the door. It would. It would.
Okay.
It wouldn't be fun, but it would.
You just couldn't fit the forklift through your door.
Yes.
Yeah. Just lift it in through the window.
I wonder with the low engagement on this last podcast, I think it's because we didn't mention Shopsmith one time.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I tried to do that deliberately, is to not do a Shopsmith mention.
Right.
Well, because we got an email. Yeah. We got an email saying, hey, you guys need to stop talking about Shopsmith just so those people will go away.
Right. The problem is, like, we were always somebody always commented the podcast before about Shopsmith. So then we had to bring it back up. It was like, it kept getting served up to us. I said it was like the chips and salsa at Mexican restaurants. Like, I don't want any more, but you keep bringing it. So we're going to keep eating it.
And then if you're going to write to us to tell us not to mention Shopsmith, we sort of have to mention Shopsmith to say that we're not going to mention it.
Yep.
There you go. I mean, it's not like I want the Shopsmith listeners to go away. I want them here. Like, this is all about woodworking. It's a big tent.
We just like to make fun of them.
Right.
We need to bring something new to make fun of.
Yeah.
We went through Intarsia and cedar
workbenches.
We could get on the epoxy people.
Yeah, that's true. They're a very angry group, though.
They
very
are
defensive. Maybe worse than Shopsmith.
Maybe
they're probably the woke crowd.
Yeah. Wow, just really stirring it up.
Every little code word we can get out there.
Yeah, no one's more woke than us, though. We are the wokest woodworkers. Whatever that means.
Oh, man.
Based on the letters I got a few years ago, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I think we even got one a couple months ago. Talking about, I don't remember what it was about.
Yeah.
About our
that's why our magazine wasn't doing as well, is because of all the woke articles in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, you know what?
Anyway, one of the things we talked about last week was your lock miter conundrums.
Yeah.
Did you figured out 4 legs then eventually, right?
Oh, yes. The 4 legs I have look great. There was just, if you look at the Popwood Instagram page, I don't Instagram very often, but usually when I do, it's to make fun of myself. And I had the original legs that I glued up that had a little bit of gap on the corners. I ended up routing a chamfer down the corners. So there was not a sharp open miter. There was a flat face with a little bit of a gap in it. And actually a few of them when I did chamfer it, the gap disappeared completely. So it's like just the last little bit of the
miter
edge.
Opened,
yeah. And I think it actually was tear out because this Baroque is so chippy. But anyways, a few of them I had chamfered a fairly wide, maybe 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch chamfer on them, glued a quarter sawn strip onto there, flush trimmed it with the 2 faces, and then re-chamfered it. And you cannot see. I mean, like if I point it out, you can see it, but you cannot see it.
Sure.
And I'm trying to be pretty deliberate with how, and this is something that we don't ever really talk about, but like if you're building a piece of furniture for a particular space, there is a show face and there is a not show face.
Right.
So like my desk is going right here. So from the driver's seat, the right-hand side is visible. That's what you see when you walk in the office. The left-hand side is going to be up against the wall. So you are not going to see any of that back left leg. You're not going to see 3 faces of that front left leg. So it's like, oh, if I got a knot or a big chunk of tear out, we're putting that on the back corner, right? Where you're not going to see it. So it's making those decisions, knowing where that piece of furniture is going to go. I find enjoyment of that. It's like, oh, like, look, this has a knot. I can still use this piece because I can put that on the back corner. So every one of my legs is labeled front left, front right, back left, back right, with arrows facing out on like which direction are the show faces.
Sure.
And the same way with I'm working on the right now. I am working on so everything's frame and panel, connecting the legs. I'm working on the back frame and panel assembly, which is 60 inches long. And finding a 60-inch clear, 6-inch wide piece of bur oak is pretty hard. AKA it is far too cold for me to dig through my lumber stack to find the perfect piece. So I'm grabbing one that is good enough, and it's in the back. Like you might see it a little bit in a photo, and it's bur oak. It's like, to me, it's cool because it just has that look. It's a wolfish prairie tree,
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's an important point in considering when you're building projects, is that it's really easy to obsess over perfect parts when, like you said, there are places and faces of parts that are never going to see the light of day.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that oak does really well is, just like the Detroit Lions, it cracks under pressure. So like, just trying to get the Northern Michiganers going now. So the faces check really bad, even in the sun, or even air drying. If the sun hits them, the faces check. So I have a couple of my like rails that are on my good show face that is facing the door when you enter my office. The inside has deep checks that were deep enough that me planing it still left a few little surface checks, but they're on the inside. So they're going to be covered by drawers. You're never going to see them. So,
right.
Yeah, it's, people like to say, well, I need straight 100% clear, white oak. Well, okay, but generally you don't see two of those faces. So,
yeah, at least two of those faces.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, like, it's a natural material, right? Like, the tree grew, there's knots in the middle of the tree. There, like, it's why we have a different Forestry Service grading for walnut versus anything else, because by nature it has more knots. It just is what it is. So,
Are you going to stain this desk? No, natural.
No, I had considered it. We used Willie's kind of mission finishing schedule on this Limbert bookcase, and I really like the looks of it. It has a really nice look. It's a little darker than I want, I think, for my desk. Instead, I have two samples I actually just finished in the last couple days. One with Waterlocks satin, and one with blonde shellac flakes. And I think I'm going to do shellac just because it's a faster application. Because I am going to pre-finish a lot of these parts before I glue up.
Sure.
So I don't want to, the Waterlocks. Hey, that Waterlocks is expensive. It was $50 for a quart can of it, which that seems really pricey to me.
Yeah.
And it is a 24-hour cure between coats, where shellac's like a 24-second cure between coats. And like the smaller, like the panels, like right now I'm working on the frame and panels and stuff. So it's like, I'm going to do the panels. I want to be able to seal those. I'll probably do those and the insides of like the rails and stuff. And then I'll do the faces after everything's been dried. But like the top, I could just bring that in and I could spray it with shellac. The Waterlocks is a brush or a pad on, and it does look nice, but I think the blonde shellac gives the oak a little bit more color that I want. So
okay,
yeah,
all right.
So no, I am not fit. That was my ADHD answer of no, I'm not finished. I'm not staining it.
Will you go in and fill any of the like visible knots? Do you do that with like a black epoxy, or what do you?
No. So what I've been doing in like my window trim and stuff, I did a combination. Some of it was ground espresso beans. I actually used espresso beans, and I like that. That works pretty well. So you fill it with espresso beans, thin CA glue wicks right down in there. Looks good. Phil and I have some videos coming up with Durham's water putty. Everybody probably knows the can of the little strong man on the can. You buy it at any hardware store. They're local here, so we're doing a few videos with them. And the video I'm going to do is using colorant to tint the epoxy or tint the filler. So I think I will probably do some black mica powder on some of it. Just looking for that dark, natural look on it.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
What can't coffee fix,
That's true.
Fix everything.
Anxiety.
Insomnia.
Mhm.
Yes, insomnia.
All right. Perfect. All right. Next question or topic that I wanted to discuss comes up here in the video studio when we're shooting the TV show compared to the shop. And then what really made me think about it was yesterday we were doing some video work out at your shop, Logan. And that is bandsaw working heights.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a Delta 14-inch cast iron frame. You think of the platonic ideal of a 14-inch bandsaw, and it's the Delta version. And they have a height. The table height is probably, I don't know, about sternum height. Pretty high, I would say. Almost like drill press height feeling. Several of the bandsaws that we have in the shop, the older Laguna that we have is kind of like that. Even that Rikon that we had on the set for a few years was like that. However, the Grizzly that we have on the set now is actually lower. And I think the Harvey that you have in your shop is lower still.
It is. It is. And I've noticed that. Yeah.
So I would like to know both of your guys' opinion. Like, does it feel weird, one or the other? And do you have a preference?
I don't know. I feel like I don't mind the lower height for like resawing and like that kind of work, but like more detailed cutting, I like it, like more sternum height, closer to my face, maybe so I can see.
Sure.
Maybe it's an eyesight thing, or control thing. So
yeah,
that's where I stand.
I agree with John, and neither Phil or myself are tall people. Chris and John are taller than both of us. But I agree with John. Like for resawing, I love the low table. Like, because then I can use a little bit more of my body weight to do some of the work than my arms. Like with something that's at chest height, I'm censoring myself there. At chest height, I'm using a lot more arm weight and arm muscle to resaw. So like doing all the panel in my shop, that was a lot of resawing. If I was doing that all by my arms, man, I'd be tired. The Crescent a little taller. That's maybe 6 inches taller than the Harvey is.
Right.
And I find it okay for resawing, but same thing. It's higher, so I'm using a lot more arm weight than I am body weight to do it. For detail work, I want that a little bit higher, closer to my face, so I can watch that line and the blade a little bit closer. However, I say that, and the Harvey saw that I have has that nickel-plated table, and it's actually a really bright surface. I find it significantly easier to see stuff on that saw than I do on the Crescent. Or, I will, to be honest, like our TV show set where Phil is sitting, that shop, that is not woodworking light. It is very dim in there when we're filming. Yes, yeah. It's very dim. It looks great on camera, but it's hard to see. So, that's not a fair comparison. But I feel like on that Harvey saw, because the reflection, everything's brighter, it's easier for me to see what I'm doing, even though it is a much lower table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to give a little shout out here. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is sponsored by Harvey Industries. Good enough is not good enough. See all of our tools at harveywoodworking.com. Yeah, I don't think I had seen that Harvey in your shop yet. And it was really fascinating to see how low it was, because it was like table saw height.
Yeah.
Or lower, which just felt unusual. Not necessarily wrong, and I think it's because I have spent most of my woodworking on that Delta model. You know, we had years ago when Powermatic was a sponsor, we had their 14-inch saw, which was
same height,
pretty much the same as the Delta. So I'm really comfortable in that zone, like that sternum height. I feel like gives me a lot of finesse control for shifting work pieces around and visibility. And the resawing that I've done, and again, those saws are limited to 6 inches, so it's not like you have humongous pieces on there. Still felt okay, but hearing you talk about big pieces, I can see that.
Yeah. And I will say, like, the Harvey saw itself is a much smaller saw than other comparable size saws, if that makes sense. Like, it's a 15-inch saw. So if you compare it to like a 15-inch Powermatic, the 15-inch Powermatic is a much larger saw.
Yes.
This Harvey is probably, knowing full well that they sponsor the podcast, but like, this is probably my favorite bandsaw that I've ever used.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The guide system on it is fantastic. I love the nickel table. Yeah, it's I had the same thought when I first got it out of the crate, because when I'm looking to buy it, like, it's like, oh, I didn't look at the table height. Like, that's a weird thing to look at. But when it showed up here,
I don't think it's really obvious on photos either.
It's not. But when I got it, I'm like, huh. It's like a Fisher Price saw, but it's not. Like, I think resaw is fantastic. I put a carbide tip blade on it. Yeah. So, and it's way easier to put a beginner in a class I'm teaching on the Harvey than it is on the Big Crescent.
Okay.
Plus, nobody should own a bandsaw without a foot brake. That's just my opinion. The foot brake is my favorite feature.
All gas, no brakes.
Yeah. The Grizzly on the set, that has a brake, but it's a motor brake.
Right.
It is not. Oh, it has a foot brake too. It does have a foot brake
as well. Yeah.
But like, when you shut it off manually, it stops itself.
Right.
So,
because that was something that bandsaws historically have done, is taken a long time to spool down, and the bigger the bandsaw, the longer that time is.
Yep. I let the Crescent run. I turned the deceleration off on the VFD, and the thing will run for 20 minutes. Just spooling, just constantly moving.
Yeah.
I don't remember what bandsaw was. I feel like we had one in the shop where it was like, just keep running and running. It's like, is it off? Did I turn it off? You'd walk away and come back, and it's still rolling along.
You end up like pushing the button like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that was that Powermatic 15-inch one.
Yeah.
That was like that.
Yeah. And that did have a foot brake. Nobody used it though.
Oh, that's what that was for.
Yeah. That wasn't the gas.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking clutch, like to go from the
Yeah.
the metal cutting speed to the wood cutting speed.
Yeah.
Which was weird because the shifter arm was way up behind the wheel.
Yeah.
So anyway, that would be a question for listeners, is if you've switched bandsaws and found that the table height was different, do you have a preference? Or what your current bandsaw height, table height is, and do you find that it's in the right place? Like, would you prefer a bandsaw table to be lower or higher or what? Love to hear that. So if you have any comments on that, you can leave that in the comment section on our YouTube channel, or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Now, the other segment that I wanted to talk about was something that you had mentioned offhandedly yesterday, Logan. We were doing a video on changing out the cutter head on a thickness planer, going from a straight knife, high-speed steel, traditional cutter head to a spiral carbide insert cutter head. And I was working on removing a couple of sprockets and pulleys that were held in place with snap rings. And you had a set of snap ring pliers and said that these are the kinds of tools that make woodworkers better.
So I think what I said is, love it or hate it, Amazon has introduced a bunch of users to the right tools for the job for a low price. So like, yeah, like having, before I had snap ring pliers that had interchangeable heads. It's one of the like 2 different types you can buy at like Harbor Freight or Lowe's or Menards or whatever. They're awful. They are stupid. So about the 3rd time I pinched my finger and threw them into the timber behind my house, I was like, I'm just going to order like a good set of them. And it's like, you can buy a set of nice snap ring pliers on Amazon for like $24. 4 different, straight and bent, open when you squeeze them or close when you squeeze them. Like the 4 types you need. And they come in a roll, and it's just like, immediately you're like, oh my God, this is the right tool. This is what having the proper tool for the application is like, and not having the cheap piece of crap one that you bought at Harbor Freight. Although Harbor Freight actually has some nice snap ring pliers now. They are more expensive, but
yeah.
I was going to say, I have a Menards Tool Shop brand snap ring pliers that you're describing, used one time, and now I feel like you killed the resale value of them.
I mean,
I feel like they're worthless now.
You paid $6.99 new for them, so
right.
I
got my use out of them.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but like you know what I mean. Like I would say I'm using Amazon as the retailer here, but like just having the right tool for the job changes the entire experience of doing said job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I think any number of us have tried to do, whether it's a snap ring or not, but that's just representative of something where a specialized tool would be super handy, and you can make do without it, but you've tripled or more the time that it takes to do just that small operation. So that in the changing of that cutter head, there were, was it 5 snap rings?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that we had to do. And with the snap ring pliers, it was 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And without snap ring pliers, there's a lot more muttering that you're doing. And, you're trying to do it with pliers and screwdrivers and stuff, and it just takes much, much longer.
Yeah. And I mean, like, snap ring pliers are the vessel right now, but like when I was working on putting this drill press back together, I realized that something at some point, like the pulley had been shifted and nothing was lining up in the head. So I needed to get it's a direct drive pulley. So there's a pulley mounted on the end of the motor, and I needed to get that off. There's nowhere to pry it off. It's a cast aluminum pulley. They're known to break. And I'm like, you know what? Go to Amazon, order a $19 pair of, 4 different sizes of pulley pullers or gear pullers. They're here the next morning. It's the right tool. I didn't break the damn thing. and it was put the arms on it, turn the wrench 3 or 4 cranks, and it pops right off. Like,
yeah,
the heck. I have, I guess, over the years learned my lesson. Like, by using the wrong tool, it ends up being far more expensive in the long run, whether I'm replacing parts or spending, 8 hours to get a broken screw out that I use the wrong size head on, or whatever.
Right. And I think along with that is the idea that now having access to some of those tools puts a job like fixing up an old machine within the reach of more people than it did in the past, where it doesn't feel as intimidating.
Yeah. It's making the task definitely more approachable for most people. And it's like, and knowing full well that, not everybody can afford just to go, buy snap ring pliers or whatever. But like, there are certain tools, I think, in the wood shop that it's like, oh, like this is the right tool for this job. And it's made me a better woodworker, just off the top of my head. As soon as I bought a vacuum chuck for my lathe, doing bowls got significantly easier and significantly better, because now I'm not trying to jam chuck a bowl on or figure out how to use cold jaws to hold a bowl to take a tenon off. I can just stick the vacuum pump on it and just suck it to the lathe head,
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, it was just one of those, for lack of a better cliche, kind of an aha moment of, yeah, it's really nice to be able to have access to low cost, decent quality tools, for the fact that, how many times have you used those snap ring pliers? Probably not very many.
Yeah. And every couple months. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you
enough that I knew right where they were.
Right. Yeah. Which is saying something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you were to use them only, say, like a dozen more times in the rest of your life, like, they were still a great value.
Yeah. Well, and another example of this was, I think, like the third screw you went to remove, Phil, head stripped off.
Right.
And I have a set of easy outs that did not work. And I was like, you know what? I got some square easy outs that are better, that I broke a bolt on the Norwood sawmill, and I ordered these square easy outs for that bolt, and I've used them for the Norwood. I used them on when a bolt I broke on my lawnmower. Used them on your planer, like,
yeah,
$9 set of easy outs.
Yeah, so that's another perfect example of having those kind of tools that I don't think a lot of people know exist.
Mm-hmm.
And the snapping of a fastener at an inopportune time can be one of the most disheartening Saturday sounds in the history of mankind.
Yep.
Makes you just want to scream, darn it. Darn it all the heck.
Well,
and like, excuse my language. Yeah. Bleep that out, please.
And the thing that I really appreciate, and I hate, like, I understand that people are like, I'm not giving Bezos my money. Like, I get it. Yeah. However, as a consumer who I try not to buy stupid stuff. I know. But like, I can.
Here's the podcast title.
Yeah. I can, like, go and look at the 50 different options for snap ring pliers and say, oh, look, this $18 set of 4 snap ring pliers has 8,000 reviews and 5 stars. Clearly, the people say it's a good buy. Yeah. And instead of, this is more a byproduct of our modern society, where it's like, I'm not stuck to what the department store has. I'm not going into, Sears and buying the the one Craftsman set of snap ring pliers that they have, and that's my only option.
Right.
So.
No, I agree. And I think it just shows the nuance of it's really easy to take sides on something like that about either Amazon or quote unquote cheap stuff made in China or Taiwan or name insert country or whatever. But the fact that it has opened up opportunities for a lot more people to be involved in stuff, to fix their own gear, to be interested in opening up the hood of an old tool, a broken tool, a car, whatever, makes people a lot more capable.
Yeah. And, you know, on that note, like the head you installed yesterday into your planer was a head from a company called Find by Tool. Okay. It is, I don't think they make any claims otherwise. It is a direct from China, Asia, Taiwan, wherever head that is designed to fit that DeWalt planer. They offer heads for a lot of different things. It used to be that, you know, Bird, Sheelix was about the only one in the space. And I know, you know, Larry and Chad and, you know, all those guys down there, like great company. I love those guys, but like the ability to buy a head at a lower cost and still have it be a quality head, you know, it opens up, you know, the same thing we're talking about. That opens up the possibility for somebody to be able to plop a head in their planer for, you know, maybe $200, $300 versus $700 or $800.
Right.
So, you know,
yeah, pick your battles.
Yeah.
I like having more people involved in woodworking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you think, having installed that head yesterday and used it once so far, it was pretty, like, it was not bad to do?
No, the process was a lot simpler than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I said in the video as we were filming it, the hardest part is the disassembly because, I mean, for the most part, nobody routinely takes apart a tool, any of their tools, to see what's going on in there. It's one of those things where you walk into your shop, I need to plane this board, resaw this part, blah, 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 and you just power on the machine, do the operation, and let it go. So opening up, you know, for that DeWalt, I had to take some stuff off the top and out of each side to get access to the cutter head and the bearings and stuff. It's just an unfamiliar landscape. I mean, it's familiar because it's like gears and chains and that kind of stuff. But keeping track of all the fasteners, where they go, making sure you have the right Allen head and Torx wrench and all that kind of stuff is the hardest part. Nothing else was really complicated. Or dealing with a stuck fastener, a stuck fastener with a relatively soft head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy for some of those to strip out. So,
yeah. You know, what I was impressed with is having only dealt with installing helical heads from a company like Bird or WGM, who I've also used in the past. Those heads are for definitely less popular tools. So it's like, here's the head, you're on your own. That head you had yesterday, it had a really nice set of instructions, which I would have, if somebody would be like, hey, is this going to come with instruction? I'd be like, no, you're dumb. No. Like, there's no way it's going to come with instructions. Like, it's kind of one of those, like, here's the head, up to you to figure out how to put it in.
Right. And
it was not the case, which was kind of cool. It had full instructions. It had everything.
Yeah.
The longest process was installing the cutters.
Right. Yeah, because it had, what was it, 56 cutters, I think, 4 rows of 14.
Yeah, yep.
So yeah, getting those in place where the cutter is facing the right way, seated well in its bed, and then torqued down to the right torque setting.
Yep.
Was definitely the longest, just because you're trying to reach down in with a little screw into a semi-dark space, drop it into the hole, and then trying to make sure that you didn't cross thread it as you were starting it up. So, yeah. But I'm excited now to have that back in my shop and to have some warmer weather where I want to be out in my shop doing some stuff, because I have some window trim that I want to make, and
it was
really cool.
It was honestly, so another stupid thing direct from China that I bought was a decibel meter. And we ran that planer with the decibel meter before and after the head. And I think it peaked at like 107 decibels before we did the change, and like 93, 94 before or after. So like a 10% reduction in decimal reading, but the sound was significantly nicer. Like, Phil had headphones on, but Nate and I are standing there with the camera, and it's like, oh, like the dust collector is louder than that planer is. And those lunchbox planers are shrill, shrieking MFers,
Yeah.
Like,
and that DeWalt 735, for as great of a machine that it is notoriously loud.
Yeah.
Even
and it
for
was
that
not.
style of planer. Yeah, and it did not.
Nope. So,
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like anytime I take the time to change planer blades or clean blades or change blades or upgrade a tool or take the time to tune up a tool, it's like, oh yeah, woodworking is kind of nice,
Yeah.
Kind of brings back the joy of it. It's like, I didn't realize how bad this was until now I'm using sharp tools, and they're quieter and easier to use, and kind of enjoyable. So. And you get better results too.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had a sample piece of oak that we ran through the first time or both times. And I don't know, was that some of that bur oak where it was?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Little twirly grain.
Yeah, swirly grain, couple of knots in there, and it was just a really smooth surface.
Yeah.
No tear out, because sometimes with regular boards, you always, or with a regular cutter head, you want to plane with the direction of the grain. But when you say that, you're planing with the grain as it runs through most of the board.
Yeah.
It's almost very rare where the grain runs the same direction in the entire board. You're going to get those spots where all of a sudden it just kind of looks a little hairy or ratty or whatever, that you're getting some tear out, and it didn't on there. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like is with the insert cutter heads, and I've seen that on our different tools here when we upgraded them to either upgraded the tool or the cutter head itself, is that those inserts, they're still shavings, but they're much smaller.
Yeah.
So they don't clog up shop vac hoses or dust collector hoses to the same degree.
It breaks the chip up for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So. All right, there you go. That's another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I would love it if you could think about an unexpected tool that made your life in the shop a little easier, made you a better woodworker. Is it something as simple as some easy outs for backing out those consarnate broken fasteners, or like snap ring pliers like we were talking about today? What's your favorite? Put that in the comment section, or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Don't forget to check out the show notes page. We'll put a couple of photos of things that we have going on here, and we will see you next time. Thanks to Harvey Tools for sponsoring today's episode. Check out their full line of woodworking tools at harveywoodworking.com. Bye, everybody.